on the matter. Heart on the matter.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us for another episode of Heart of the Matter. We are your hosts, Marcus and Scott. This podcast takes a deep dive into the issues of a man's heart, and it is our sincere desire to bring practical ways to be centered in all areas of life.
Today, we're going to be talking about one of our biggest regrets. We look back on moments where we made mistakes, advice we can give to ourselves, and mistakes aren't final. How do we grow from them? So let's get to the heart of the matter.
Let's get to the heart of the matter.
We've all made mistakes and have regrets. Marcus, what you got? What's your biggest regret you think you got in your life?
I don't know that we have enough time for this podcast for all of the mistakes. I try not to hold on to regrets, but if we're going to have some talking points today, one thing that I often go back to is I wish that I would have finished school. Some people, I guess it depends on who you talk to, would still think today that I'm a pretty smart guy.
Depends on who you talk to.
Who you talk to. My brother often says I'm one of the smartest people that he knows, and I'm just like, wow, you should know more people. Shouts out to Big Jeff. What's up, boy? But yeah, I went to school on mostly an academic scholarship. It was like 85, 90%. And I got caught up. I got caught up in kicking it. I started majoring in kicking it. And it was a change of in ways of my personality because I didn't often go with what everybody else was doing. I prided myself on because I know that peer pressure is real, but I did what I wanted to do because it's what I wanted to do or what I didn't want to do. And I think when I got to school, one, I had this element of freedom that I didn't have before. And to be honest with you, when I graduated from high school, I was tired of school. And one of my biggest regrets, if we're going to talk about this, is that I didn't take time off, that I didn't take time between graduation and really deciding which direction I wanted to go so that I could really commit to that.
Do you feel, because you're saying you didn't finish school, so do you feel sometimes lesser than somebody that did? Or is it just,
At times I have, like if we go back years ago, I don't know that I do much comparison to others now. So it's a personal thing for me.
gotcha?
If I believe I'm I'm not the sharpest tool in the drawer, but I'm not a spoon either,
Exactly.
right? Like I may not be the sharpest utensil in
You
the
got an edge on you
I may not be
somewhere.
the sharpest utensil in the drawer, but I'm not a spoon either. Spoon could be pretty deadly too, depending on how you use it. Anyway, I'm not a spoon. Um, I believe that I should at least have, at the very minimum, a bachelor's. If I'm being honest, I should be somebody's doctorate of something at this point. And it's just not allowing myself to be focused. And, we use the phrase now, life be life, and you put these things on the back burner for those things. And so, yeah, I wish that I had finished school. And people will say, and I agree with you, it's never too late, that today is called the present because it is a gift and you can start today and accomplish anything that you want to do. I absolutely believe that.
But at this point, life be life. And where do you find time to go back, or not even go back? Where do you find the time to do all that and continue on with life? That's where you're at kind of right now.
Sometimes I do think that. And you have to make time. you find opportunities where you're doing something else that may not serve you best for where you want to be, and it's in those moments that you just have to kind of block out everything and commit to a thing. So we're talking about biggest regrets or something that I wish that I had one taken time between when I graduated and what I was going to do. And then two, when I did choose to go to school, I wish that I would have the mindset that I have now. I'm much older. I would like to believe I'm a lot more mature. And I would absolutely, finishing wouldn't be a question for me with the mindset that I have now if I could talk to that young man then.
And my biggest regret is kind of in that same vein of I was really never committed to anything.
Right.
Man, every win that came, I was right in there with it. I'd think, man, this is the greatest thing, and I'd try to do that, and this is the greatest thing. And man, life just got away from me. And man, it got to a point where I was just everywhere. I didn't know who I was. I was really confused. My emotions were everywhere, and it just led me down a dark path. There was no commitment. I didn't have a mom and dad that showed me, hey, this is the way to go. So I was basically raising myself, and I just went down every wind that I knew of, and it overtook me. And I wish that as a young man, I learned how to be committed to things and to start a project and finish a project.
Finish a project.
Not start one and then start another one and start another one. It's start something and then finish it.
Absolutely.
And that's where I wish that
100%.
I could go back and be committed in areas of my life.
So, segueing into advice you would give yourself then for if I knew then what I know now, what would you say to that young man? And how do you think, because people say that oftentimes, but I often think about the young man, the headstrong young man that I was. I can't honestly say that I wasn't given positive advice. I just think that maybe I was allowing the distractions to be louder than the positive advice that I should have been listening to. So, knowing what you know now, what would you say to that young man? And how do you think you would be able to convince him and get him to listen to you?
I think it's by example. Number one, I would be an example to that young man. I didn't have a lot of examples. I didn't have somebody showing me the right way to do things. And I think as both of us being fathers, we are living examples of what we want our children to be. And we need to be that example to them and show them, not just tell them, because words
Absolutely.
are empty.
Absolutely.
If I tell them to do something and I'm not doing it, they're gonna say, man, that dude's a hypocrite.
Absolutely.
There's been times in my life when, I started going to church at an older age. I got into the church about 30 years old, and talking about being committed to something, I wasn't fully committed to this. I'd go to church and serve and do all these things, and I'd have a change of clothes in the car because I knew after church I was going to hit this club scene.
Turn up.
And and
Turn up for what?
and we're not talking about a church that's pretty liberal or anything like that. We're talking about a church that was ultra
Oh,
conservative,
wow.
that didn't want you to, I mean, we couldn't even play Monopoly because there was dice
Come on, man.
that you had to
Come
that you
on,
had to
man.
roll. So they said, no, that's gambling paraphernalia. So
Come on,
when
man.
you're talking about commitment, I did not know how to be committed to anything.
Gotcha.
And so what I would tell that young man is to find some positive role models in his life, even if he doesn't have parents to show him, get real close to people who are positive and have succeeded in life, and I'm not talking about just financial success, I'm talking about morally, spiritually, get close to them people and see how they've made it and ask a lot of questions. Ask a whole lot of questions.
You made me want to, in the being an example or finding an example, we could use fancy words like a mentor or something like that. That often happens in those types of environments where someone is more mature, be it in age, generationally, or spiritually. So, how would we speak to someone that you are fond of, someone that you're watching and you have chosen to emulate or watch their lives as something positive or as a positive role model, something that you could, like I said, follow or emulate? And you find out something about them that is disturbing or damaging. It has put them in a negative light. So you had them and you saw them in one way, and then you found out something about them that, let's say, was okay. You brought it up. Someone was watching you, and I know I heard you say this was younger in your walk, in your faith. But let's say that there was a young man that was watching you and was like, "Brother Scott, man, that's who I want to be like." And then it comes out to them that Brother Scott was in the club turning up. How what would you say to that young man who now finds himself in a broken place? And you know how much I love this term. He's now church hurt because Brother Scott still has some issues that he was working through.
Number one, we can't deify people.
I love it.
Is look, we're all clay and we all got issues that we deal with. So don't think that the person that you feel is the perfect person is perfect,
Absolutely.
because we all deal with issues. So what you have to do is take the good that that person has, and if you happen to find out there's a there's some stuff going on, show grace to him too, because that man is he's clay also. He's not gonna, nobody is perfect. And so many times we set people on these thrones or on these pedestals that they're above me or they've got a perfect life. And especially in your place of fellowship, people put on their best show there and they go home and sometimes their lives are broken. So don't set these people on pedestals. Understand that they are also struggling just as much as anybody else, but they can still be an example. There's always good there, or most of the time. There's if you Most of the time people are not genuinely trying to hurt people.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, don't throw away the good that you can grow from just because you find out that there's still humanity with them. There's still human error in them. So we don't throw them away, is what you're saying. Because
Absolutely not.
you know that it's kind of a hot button topic. And I love the way that I kind of brought that around to you, because I feel like we do that often when someone has made a mistake. We seem to forget that we all need a savior and
And we all need grace,
we all need grace.
because you can become that judgmental person and you can become the one that's steady pointing your finger. There may come back a day that you're going to need some grace in your life, and you would hope that you've shown it, that you've extended that hand.
You're going to be looking for grace. I've said it before. It's one of those MJ quotables. when you're in a position to receive grace, we have both hands open. Please give me more. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Give me another chance. But when you're in a position to give grace, we seem to often find a way to itemize this list of things that you should have known. You should have known better and you shouldn't have done me like that. And so we want to be stingy with how we hand out grace. Like, I don't know about that. But if it was me, I think this was our pastor, shout out Jonathan Stringfellow. He says, when there's an area where I'm struggling with, the devil is always busy. But when it's somewhere where you're struggling, oh, you should have known better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're supposed to know better. You're supposed to have more Jesus than that. You're supposed to have more faith than that. But when it's me, the devil's always fighting me. But the devil ain't
They're
fighting
fighting you.
you. You should have known better. So yeah.
But I think that's the biggest thing is don't throw away what's good just because you see some bad. And I mean, there are times when I'm saying that people are hurt.
Oh, absolutely.
That are truly hurt and they were done wrong. We're talking a whole different story there. When we're just talking about, man, people, they fail. We all do.
Absolutely.
We all fall. And what we need to do instead of tearing them down more is let's lift them up.
I keep wanting to quote one of my favorite scriptures, and this is in Galatians 6. Brethren, when you find a brother who's in a fault, you who are spiritual are to restore him in a spirit of meekness, considering yourself, lest you too are also tempted. And that's kind of what you said. Be careful when you're pointing your finger at someone else because you found out an area where they've fallen short, because the opportunity could find itself back around. It may not be the same way that Scott falls short, but Marcus could absolutely have this thing. So I'm looking at Scott like, oh, come on, bro.
You should have had that together.
I know you should have known better than that. But because that's not my issue, but then over here, I've got something that I'm struggling with, and you find out about it. Now I'm like, hey, man, I need my bad. You know what I mean? I know. You're like, no.
Nope.
You should have known better.
You shouldn't have did that to me.
Absolutely.
And I found that some of my greatest growth came in the times of my hardest struggles.
Talk on it.
And so many people want life to be without problems. And they think that, oh man, it's going to be so great. Man, some of my greatest growth come when I was at my darkest days and when I felt like I was at the lowest pit of my life, that I had to persevere through so much that it built character in me.
Absolutely.
And it built me into the man that I am today, and that I can raise my 3 girls. Man, I'm so glad that I have one of my daughters in here today. Sophia's here with us.
Shouts out to Fia.
Shouts out to Fia, who's been helping us today. It's so good to have known that in those hard times, it brought me to a place of so much brokenness that I didn't have a choice but to change. I didn't have a choice but to change.
Because I can't stay here.
I knew at some point, I said, man, I cannot continue to live my life
absolutely.
like this. So what I'm going to do is I got to do something different. I was in between jobs. I was just finna get married. This is almost 15 years ago. And I was doing some work and I was making about $25 an hour. And I was like, man, I'm doing good. Well, the economy decided that it wanted to crash, and it didn't care about me. It didn't care about anybody else. The economy crashes, the home market bottoms out. And I was in building homes and building cabinets. And I'm like, man, I don't have anything to fall back on. So I go out to this company and they say, well, we'll give you $9.50 an hour. I said, $9.50? I said, man, I make $25 an hour. I said, I don't care how much you make. I'm willing to pay you $9.50. So I'm like, all right, let me think about it for a little while. And I go back home. And like I said, me and my wife we were fixing to get married. My wife said, man, 950 is better than zero. So you ought to take that job. And so I took the job. I thought, man, this is just gonna be a Passover job. You know, it'll make ends meet till I find something better. 15 years later, I'm still at that same job and making tons more than 950.
You're not making 950?
No, I'm still not making 950. I wouldn't be supporting the family that I have now on 950. But what it did, it's another thing that shows commitment. When you're committed to something, and there's been days when I wanted to walk off of it and say, man, this is not worth it. But I've never felt that leading.
So just because you have hard times or because something seems tough doesn't mean that you throw it all away. Don't give up now. You're this close.
You're this close. And every time that I thought I was going to give up, something else, hey, man, here's another bonus. And because of consistency,
Absolutely.
I've raised up there. And so what it tells me is mistakes aren't forever. I've made many mistakes in my life. I drank my whole 20s to 30s away. I didn't really care about much. Didn't have to commit. Not really committed to anything there either. You know. Later, I was a late bloomer on responsibility.
Right.
I didn't have a lot of responsibility. It was like I said, every win just kind of carried me. I've lived different places. I've left my family and moved off on them, and I've just done
So
it.
clarify that. I don't want y'all to think that he has some other family somewhere that he turned his back on
No.
and left in the dust. When you say you left your family,
My biological family, the people who raised me.
okay,
The people who raised me,
just for someone that was like,
just
what?
some-
He turned around, left his family? And then, no.
No, this is all previous having a wife and kids.
Okay.
This is all
clarify
previous
that.
having a wife and
I
kids.
appreciate you saying that.
I did what Scott wanted to do, and I thought that was living life.
Yeah.
I thought that's how you live life. But man, it was not. There was definitely no satisfaction there. There was no commitment, and it turned into a real lonesome place.
I think a lot of young men could probably take that advice. Maybe they could see themselves there now. And because you're not seeing the outcome that you want right now, and there's some things that you know without somebody coming to you saying, you're better than this. You can do better. You have to find within yourself, like you said, I can't keep living like this. So it's okay to make mistakes. Sometimes mistakes are going to be necessary for you to, they become your building blocks.
Yes.
So you can allow them to become the locks that you put on the prison that keeps you in this place, or you can allow them to be the building blocks to say, okay, that was dumb. I can't keep doing that. So let's take that and grow from it and move on. And yeah, I think you used the word consistency. To continue to make positive steps, then eventually you'll find yourself like, wow, I can't believe that I've come this far. I can remember when this wouldn't have been something that I would have been into.
And a good word for that is gaining momentum.
Momentum. Absolutely.
You make one good decision, you make another one, and this momentum starts building. And the next thing you know, you're like, wow, I can't believe I made it here.
Positive momentum.
And it goes the same way with negative momentum. You can go right the other way too and go backwards.
Naturally.
So if you start building positive momentum in your life, things start to change. And you start gaining that and you're like, wow, okay, this is going better. This is going better. This is going better. And you start building somewhere.
So it's never too late. You can start right where you are and begin the life that you want to have. Become the example that you would like to see. And your mistakes, they don't define you. Your circumstances don't have to be your conclusion. You can pick up from where you are and still make the best of it. It's never too late.
You know, even if you're at a place where you feel like you're too old and life's passed you by, you can pick up today and move on.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like the parable of the prodigal son, and he woke up to himself.
He came to
Came to
himself.
himself while in that hog pen and said, "Man, this is not for me."
Right.
That's what I did. That day, I remember a defining day that I said, "Nope, not no more. I'm not going to continue like this." In conclusion, I think we have done our best to get people where we were at to where they'll be. So
Maybe there's room for part 2 to this.
an extension.
Something with we've got a couple of episodes that I think that we could come back to and kind of dig into a little, we'll say take a deeper dive. But I think that is going to be a wrap for today.
This has been the heart of the matter. We'll see y'all later. Stay strong.
Heart on the matter.